Okay, I guess we're ready to start. It's 8:30. I'll call to order the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting of September 3rd to order. Roll call. John Reinhardt.
Here.
Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
Carolyn Campbell.
Here.
Joseph Gottemaler.
Here.
And I'm here, so we're missing Jim Kearns and Lou Ness, I believe. Minutes for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gottemaler, seconded by Carl. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Public comments, Scott?
We have none. Last call.
Okay, nobody from the public wants to talk to us today. Members' comments? No members' comments. We'll move right on to new business. 5.1 is Mr. Timothy Watkins, who is here to interview for the Greenwood Drainage District. Tim, if you'd like to sit up in the front seat or stand in the corner, whatever you're comfortable with, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and if any of the board members have questions, we'll
Have a seat, relax.
Well, I'm a farmer in Woodstock, been here for since '81. We do own some land in the Greenwood Drainage District, and I got on it because Don Gold pushed me. And Don does a phenomenal job, and he's taught me a lot, and he's done a lot. And we have a long way to go, but keeping the drainage district active and in a smaller control, I think, has worked really well for us because we've been able to do things with some private monies and public monies, and it just has really worked out well. And you know, with being like this, we get calls from, I get calls from people, Don gets calls from neighbors that when there's a problem, and it's worked, it really worked, that system really works well. That's about all I can say for that, is that, you know, when it's localized and things like that, and people know who the officers are, or whatever, they can call and get results or get an answer pretty quickly. So I enjoy it because it is helping. And I see the help and the good that it's done. You can tell that, we can all tell that by Route 120, the lake by Route 120 by Marion School is now gone. You see that. And with all the rain we've had this year, and that's still gone, that was really, really a benefit.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Watkins? How many people, are there three people on that?
Two.
Two?
Don and I, yeah.
Just you and Don. There's supposed to be three?
Well, we'd like to have three, but it's tough to get volunteers.
Okay. There should be three.
Yeah.
Supposed to be three on every district.
It's been two for a long, long time. Keith Weingart was on it, and Leonard Schultz was on it, and John Heider was on it, and then they left one at a time, you know, and then it was down to two for a long time. And then Don took over, and then the other two left. He was by himself, kind of, so this will be my second term.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Watkins? I did see it, one of the things you had put in your application was working out a situation with this city of Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
Is that out here at the subdivision, or is that?
Well, we have two difficulties right now with the village of Woodstock, and that is that if you look on Queen Anne Road, well, it's actually Raffle Road, where they put the Merriman Park in.
Mm-hmm.
When they put Merriman Park in, somebody kind of gave them the okay to, you know, do whatever they felt they wanted to do. And they just left open tiles and cut through tiles, and it's a mess out there. And nobody's taking responsibility for it, so we're trying to figure that out as to how we're gonna fix that mess. And then at the park on, not Ware Road, Banford Road, the Banford Park, we've got a big problem there because if the lake that we cleaned up goes through there, and we put all new tile in from 120 all the way to Banford Park, and then the city put the Banford Park parking lot and the trees right on top of our drain tile. So now the tree roots and stuff have grown into the tile, are plugging up the tile a little bit. The water still did clear well, but we'd like to get that cleaned out, and we're struggling with, why did they put the parking lot and the trees on the tile? Because it drained their water now, their drainage water comes into that same tile and then goes across over into the Sonatas. So we're getting a lot of water coming and we're getting it restricted, and we need to, you know, get that figured out, because that's gonna become a problem in time. It's a
Yeah,
problem already.
problem already, and it's not gonna get better unless you do something with it, right?
Right. And that's been it's been not a long, I don't wanna say a battle, but it's been difficult getting anybody at the city level to cooperate with us, but now we've got an attorney and we've made some comments to them that they want to talk to us now about doing something.
Yeah, good.
So that's a positive.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate your volunteering for this, and go get that third guy.
Yeah.
Or gal, I said.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move right on to the 5.2, deliberation and selection for the Greenwood Drainage District for recommendation to the chairman. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yep.
Makes a motion for Timothy Watkins, seconded by Joe. Any discussion? I think we're good to go because we're glad to have a volunteer.
Which term? There's 2 terms
Oh.
listed.
Uh-oh.
The longer one.
The longer one. Okay.
Okay,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's good with me.
yeah, great. Okay, Timothy Watkins been,
Gotta vote.
we have a move and
This is
a
27. To the
second.
2027.
So we'll go to vote if there's no further discussion. John Reinhardt,
Yes.
Carl Kaminsky.
Yes.
Carolyn Campbell,
Yes.
Joe Gademauer.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Mr. Watkins will be moved forward to the chairman for the longer term. Presentations. Oops, we got a presentation. Routine consent agenda.
It's only one item, so I'll move to approve the one item.
We got a motion to move to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Trout Valley for building permit review, inspection, etc. Adam, let's see, we had moved, we got a second by Carl. Go ahead, Adam, if you got any discussion regarding that.
There's not a lot. This has been a pretty routine IGA with Trout Valley. It dates back to the 90s. It changed form a little bit in 2012 for the first time in kind of the way we are operating with it, which is just building permit issuance and then inspections. Trout Valley does their own compliance and their own enforcement. So we coordinate and do all that stuff, turn it over to them, but we don't do anything, we don't write anything, cite the property, anything like that. So, but other than that, it's maybe a dozen permits a year, tops. So it's pretty absorbable.
Okay, nothing negative to your budget on the situation?
Nope. Yeah, and once we move to our new permit system, it'll be a lot cleaner. The hardest part is they have an architectural review committee. So we've always, every year, we try to put a point of emphasis on that. Once the permit software is in there, it'll be just it'll block it. We won't be able to issue anything. So that is a commitment we've made to the village we'll always focus on cleaning that up for them.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone have any questions for Adam on this? Or any further discussion? None, we'll go to vote.
All right. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. We'll move on to old business. Number 8 is old business, and we have a Spongy Moth update. We have data.
We do.
Excited to hear this.
I know that when you looked at the agenda over the weekend, you were so excited about this report, so.
I wanted to move it to the top.
No, I gotta find, where is my thing? Hold on, something happened, I just lost my screen.
This is not good.
Spongy moths were after you.
Yeah.
Well, they're not a problem anymore.
Please bear with me, because now I have to find it. It was up, I was ready to go. But as I find this, I'd like to multitask. I just want to, once again, thank all of our citizen scientists for participating in our spongy moth data collection by hanging up the traps, and many of them took on the unpleasant task of counting the spongy moths. What we found, well, the numbers were a lot higher than we expected. Even those areas that sprayed last year, that took it upon themselves, they still had higher numbers than really what we had expected. But I really just wanted to show you, at this point in time, the dispersion of traps across the area and kind of some of the hot spots, and then really talk about next steps. And once again, I had it up and I...
Well, I can talk for a minute.
Sure.
I was one of them. I put up mine in my neighborhood. I wasn't expecting any, I don't know. And it wasn't, of course, I only had 18, but in my little tree. But it was interesting because I was expecting it to be, when I saw any, I was like, ooh, but they're dry and you can see the antenna things on the top.
They're good with chocolate.
Part, just dip them, you know.
Do they soak it up?
So,
Interesting process, to say the least.
it was actually, I think a lot of people who participated really were glad to do so. It was educational for them, and they were happy to help out. So,
Well, I had 211,
Oh, did you really?
but I have a woods by my house, though not many oak trees,
Was this one trap that had 200?
just one trap, yeah.
okay. All right, this is, we learned things. I learned that squirrels like to rob the traps, and we had a few traps that they literally gnawed through and ate the spongy moths. So I guess maybe they're good with chocolate, I don't know. But we had a few that had no data because the traps were in essence robbed. But I just really wanted to touch on very high level where we're at. So this is, first off, this is a website or tool that GIS put together. So I want to thank our friends at GIS for helping us out. This is how we manage the trap location, where and then how we were able to input the data. So you can see it has some of the names on here. The numbers correspond to the trap number, not the number of moths found in the trap. But you can see we actually have pretty good dispersion throughout the county. I was very pleased about that, and you know, it gives us a really good sense of where the population is. What we're going to do is we're going to overlay this with the state's numbers from last year, so we can kind of see some changes. And then the state actually asked us for our data, so they're going to upload it into their new or their 2024 data. So we're really pleased to help out with their understanding of the population. McHenry County's infested. We're not going to get rid of the spongy moths. They're here to stay. All we can do at any effort is really just to suppress populations in the hotspots. So what we wanted to do with this is really identify where those hotspots are, and in the event that the county or any resident or groups of residents will take on the spraying, they have an understanding of their population. So GIS put together this fantastic tool, and we had one of our high school or one of our interns from the summer really work with me to help put in this data. But it's really cool. I just want to show you. And I'm not going to click on every one, but I'll give you a few good examples. Well, as Carolyn mentioned, so her trap is here, and then I just click on her trap, and it should pop up all her data, the address, and then the count. So then in some areas, or sometimes people brought in or uploaded photos, so we can add photos to this tool. But all this area that we have focused, 16, 17, 18 miles per trap, which tells you, south of the lake, really a low, low population. Other areas, like we just talked about around Trout Valley, this area, remember Kunkel had 132 moths in his trap. This area had between 100 and 200. Most of the traps had between 100 and 200. Some traps, though, were really, really high. As I reported early on this, we had one hotspot, which was along East Crystal Lake Avenue. This was trap number 2. I had the unpleasant responsibility of counting their traps because it was just too many. Open up. They had 1,462 moths in the trap.
One trap.
One trap.
That must have been packed pretty full.
It was packed.
Yeah.
And then, because they tend to burrow into one another. I'm not to go into those gruesome details. But yeah, it was more than we expected. And I didn't realize that bugs could hold that many, but they did.
So, I'm going to interrupt you, I guess I will, but was there the defoliage of the trees in that area significant, or?
It was substantial. It wasn't 100%, but I would say the trees that got down to about 25 to 30% defoliation. They have lots of oaks. The interesting thing is it really was isolated to their property. If you ever drive East Crystal Lake Avenue, as soon as you turn off of 31 and you head east, there's a lot of oaks on both sides of it was really localized to their property. So
Are they right or left when you turn?
they're on the north side of it, so they'd be on, as you're heading out there, on the left-hand side. Their neighbor had some, but they just had the bulk of it. Across the street, there's a lot of oaks. You know, there were some presence of them, but nothing like Campy and Steve had, which is unfortunate. So we're going to watch that. But once again, it was peculiar because it was so localized, and there were a lot of oaks in and around the area. But it was bad to see firsthand. When you have spongy moth caterpillars all over, you can certainly understand why the residents, have a concern about that, because you can't really sit in your backyard because there's so many of them. And it only runs from May through June, and then afterwards, then they go through their phases. But they do a lot of damage between that. So that was our biggest hotspot. We had a couple other hotspots. This trap right here. Oh wait, where is it? Okay, trap number 26. We had over 1,000 moths. So you can see, 1,000 here, 1,000 here. But then again, we had a 0 here, and then board member Shorten had 87. So it's really weird. 1,000, and board member Wagner had 450. So we had 1,000, 450, 1,400, but then other traps did not quite have as many. 151. This is what it looks like with the picture. Close that down.
So, and you said for yours was no data because the squirrel got yours?
So actually mine, it opened up in the bottom, and when I went to check it, I'm like, oh. So, but since everybody in our area had between 15, 16, 17, it really didn't give us, we didn't really lose any data. I mean, all that area we know is probably was pretty consistent, but so those are some of the hot spots. We had actually Christy, who sits up front. Her trap she had 972. So she's up in,
Wow.
so this one. So this area, I'm going to say this area in the kind of the northeast, we're seeing a lot of higher populations. To the northwest, Larry, as you had mentioned, you had you didn't have as many. Your number was typical to what we're seeing. 211. Our facilities director, Mr. Burrows, had 265. So we have some good consistent numbers. We got a good idea of the population. What is neat about this tool is sometimes when you have traps on multiple locations on the property, the GIS tool gives you the ability to really place them exactly where they are. We had 2 traps here at the county administration building, one here by the parking lot, which is trap number 3, and then we had one what I call in the back 40, trap number 62. So these markings indicate exactly where they were on the county's property. So sometimes you could say, well, what's the difference between the two? Are they that close or that far? 43 from the parking lot, and conversely, we had 164 from the back 40. So you can see sometimes even on the same property, you'll get a little different numbers. But generally, between 100 to 200, plus or minus, that was the average. We had a few of the hot spots, good dispersion throughout the county. And then once we compare this data, which I'll tell you is a lot higher than what we saw from the state's numbers last year, because that's what we went off of. And then we'll be interested to see what the state's numbers will show this year to see if we have consistency. That's being developed. With that, I think it was a wonderful exercise. We got really good data, and we can see how the population changes. I was really concerned because when we talked last year about the moth blow, all the moths that basically were pushed in from through Wisconsin and into the Lake Geneva area, which was pretty substantial. I thought we were going to have a whole lot of moths, but 300 here. Sue Rose actually helped us. She put 3 traps out in various locations, so we appreciate her. So it's 690. So we had some higher numbers. Tracy's going to give me her numbers, but really I thought we'd have a lot higher because we know this area was heavily affected last year into this year. That's where we sit. We're still developing that data, and just wanted to give you an update, show you where we are. So one item to note, this is, and I'm kind of proud of this. As you may recall, last year I went to the annual Lemon Disc Bar Review, or as we call it, Spongy Moth Convention, and I learned quite a bit. They've actually invited me to be a speaker at this year's Spongy Moth Convention. There's going to be, they're going to cover some of the costs. What they discovered last year by my attendance is you're dealing with a lot of people on the state level, and in some cases on the federal level. It was, they work in that world, but sometimes they lose touch with this local level. And I think what they want me to do is just help them, understand just that local touch and what they need to do, some things to be mindful of. So, so with the county's support, I'd like to attend that and maybe help educate those who educated me so much last year. So it'll happen in early November. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
2 things. One, are you going to do the program again next May?
So that's, I think, up to the committee. I would recommend it. I would highly recommend it. We already indicated that we would. I think since we got this rolled out, it would be nice just to keep track of the data. It wasn't a major undertaking because we didn't develop everything this year, but now it's developed. It's easy to just to keep it going. The traps weren't that expensive, and we had a lot of enthusiasm from our citizen scientists. So.
Did the state donate those, or how did they come about?
They donated the pheromone strip and the pheromone strip, and then the insecticide vapor strip. So inside each trap there was a really long, basically twisty tie, and on that we had a pheromone strip that was tied, and then we had almost looked like a piece of fruit roll-up was a vapor strip. The state gave me those, and we just bought the traps, and I think they were $200 or so for the traps. And then we had free labor to put those together.
I just say you had to put them together.
Yeah, so my daughter, after right at the start of summer break, and she likes doing things like that, so we brought her in for a couple of days, and so Molly Hartman is responsible for assembling all those traps. We had 65 total deployed through the county.
You did a great job.
Yeah, right, it was good.
The one other thing, you said something kind of might need to take a look at when you said that, hey, this is an area that we sprayed last year and the numbers are higher. That would sound like spraying don't work.
So there's a lot that goes into it. Once again, all you're going to do with spraying is suppress, and typically you suppress the population at that time because the spraying will kill those caterpillars, the first or second instar, at that time. So if you remember Frank and Susan Galalio, they were ones that came in and said, we have the issue, and they brought this to the county's attention. Their trap had 620. Actually, the state put up a trap on their property as well, which I'm waiting on that data. But that was still a lot. They did spray last year. Not too far away, we had another trap. They had 2 traps on their property. The second one had 650. So they had a pretty high population even for spring. Mr. Vanderspool sprayed this year, he said, and he got together with some neighbors. So his trap actually, even for spraying, had a higher than we would expect.
Where is he?
He is here. So he had 157, and he actually sprayed this year. Now, keep in mind, your spraying is only going to impact the area that you spray. Moths fly, or the male spongy moths fly. So, and that pheromone strip will track them from a quarter mile. Some of you may recall former Assistant State's Attorney Jana Blake. She participated this year. She did not spray, and she had 275. So the moths in this area could maybe very easily fly into this trap. So just because they had higher numbers doesn't mean that it didn't work. what's remarkable about Mr. Vanderspool is he said he did spray this year and he still had a higher number, but I mean, a lot of things can take a factor. You know, I don't know what was sprayed and what wasn't, and so and that pheromone strip is pretty powerful. In fact, when I was delivering traps, there was one, in fact, 2 houses, as I was walking in with the trap, I had Spongy Moth like already on it. And like, as soon as I got out of the car, I was like, wow, it's pretty powerful stuff. So that's what we have. Of course, as we went into this year, the committee's direction was, you know, we want to continue monitoring the population. We are, so now we have a good sense of where it is. I'm going to work with GIS to develop some different presentations for this data, so like heat maps or something that gives you a better visual. But I just really want to show you how many traps we had out, dispersion, and at a high level, what we received for counts. And so, more to come. And we'll
So would we have aerial pictures of some of the spots where the defoliation was stronger and be able to relate that to the number of spongy moths in the trap and something that we could follow year to year? And then a little bit of follow-up is, do we know anything about what's going on in Wisconsin? Because when John flew up there to Oshkosh, you said the trees weren't too bad this year,
Yeah, but
right?
you know, right above the kettle moraine in 23, there were just 50-mile stretches where all of the savannas were just barren of leaves.
And that was last year.
And that was in 23. And this year, they're 99% totally foliage full. Just a few trees that had probably died. They were probably old trees though. So, and I was talking to Larry and Joe also about, you know, I went to see the forestry department because last year they had, you know, said that we don't even look back, we're looking forward. And but they were gone this year because of all the fires in California. They didn't have one person to man a booth up in Oshkosh, so they didn't even open it. The fires were that bad.
Oh, wow.
So the Parks Department, the federal, or you know, the National Parks Department, were next to them. So I asked them, you know, about their radar with the spongy moth, and they said it's not even on our radar. What are you talking about? They don't even. It's not in their purview to even. Yeah. So I mean, it's just, you know, but it was promising to see that all of those trees came back from those bugs.
Yeah, that is, and we know that, well, we received word that around Lake Geneva, there were several areas that were sprayed by Hendrickson's flying service. They did spraying up there. So last year, we know the population was really bad. They did some spraying. So I don't know, to your question about, you know, if we had any aerial shots from those affected last year to what they look like this year. Even talking to Mr. Vanderspool and Frank and Susan about their areas, they were heavily impacted last year, but they said they weren't as bad this year. The numbers, you know, show that they're still high, but they didn't receive, you know, the amount of basically caterpillars that they saw last year. In fact, you know, they were. So it's really interesting. But keep in mind, as we had said too, the population tends to explode and then crash. And when I concluded my report in January to you, when I left that question open, I said, you know, we had a population explosion. Will it crash this year, or will it not? And then it didn't. We obviously got higher numbers. That's why I really want to see what the state's numbers do. And also, too, you know, are we at the peak of the explosion this year, and will it crash for next year? We did have a warm, wet spring, which is really conducive to that fungus called Entomophaga maimai, which is really fatal to the caterpillars. And I'll tell you, when I visited a few places, you saw these the caterpillars, when they hang vertically, they're usually killed by that fungus. So we know that the fungus was out there doing what it naturally is going to do, and it's only fatal to the spongy moth caterpillars. So it's kind of like COVID for spongy moths. But it was there, it was present. We were hoping to see a little bit more of that, but you know, every year is going to be different. So I'm curious to see what next year will hold. Yeah.
How do we put that data in with this mapping for the weather, and how it may or may not have affected that fungi? Is it something we can sort of track? I mean, if we get high numbers, there's a reason for it. you know, so how do we track that besides our memory of, well, I think that was a wet spring?
Yeah, you know, and I think that's it. It's just going year to year, and maybe noting what the conditions were. We did have that warm, wet spring this year. It was conducive. I would say just looking at the data, you know, as it trends, and that's going to be probably your telltale sign about what happens. And what you're going to see is population is going to shift in some areas. You know, that maybe it was really light, and I'm hopefully I'm not going to jinx, you know, for Pete and I and for Carolyn. You know, maybe our area is the next hotspot. I don't know, but you know, it tends to ebb and flow, and I guess we'll find out. That's why it's important just to continue the data. And many of those who participated this year expressed a willingness to do it again next year. So then we'll have year-to-year consistent data on the same property, and I think that will start painting the picture. As we said, 2009, 2010, it was a pretty high population, and then it crashed in 2011. Why it crashed? Not sure. Was it because of a warm, wet spring, I'm not sure. I wasn't. We were really. Well, I guess the county was involved with Spongy Moth because you did, you know, participate in some suppression programs, but it wasn't really tracking to the extent that we're tracking now. So, to your question, it's really hard to try to put together the causal effects of why this area is a hotspot this year versus last year, and what, you know, changed. And just maybe whatever comes out, just do some observations. The challenge is because we are an infested county, really the state's not taking an interest in this. They're moving west. They were focused on Joe Davies County this year because that's really where that line is, and they want to try to find and suppress those or mitigate those hot spots before they get too bad out there.
So I think it's interesting and worthwhile to do it for a few years to track this, but then it comes back to, with the county, if we did see the real high numbers and trees being destroyed, you know, are we going to participate?
Yeah.
Or is that a decision we leave to at that time, and then we'd have the data? You know, if we made the decision we're not going to participate, then why are we tracking it, kind of thing? If we feel we track it and that decision might be different somewhere down the road, then it's worthwhile to track it.
That is truly your policy question. You had it last year, and then even as we go into future years, and you know, what does the county do? Do you participate? That's really it's up to you, and we can provide you the data, and all we can do is give you the data to help you make that decision. Whatever you feel is in the public best interest. You know, once again, the Conservation District gave you their position on it. I think that was a very powerful position that they provided. We've had residents that, you know, have expressed me on the phone, oh, what's the county going to do? So we're monitoring the population this year, and you know, but that's I think that's a very fair question to ask, and it's a difficult question for as policymakers. What do you do? Because know that we can't spray the entire county, but if we find those areas, I mean, you know, do you spray or do you have a role? What is the county's role?
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point, and I think we at least made the decision we weren't going to do, and I mean, we're not going to spray. That we haven't felt that was our role to expend public dollars on the spraying, given, you know, just the data from the Conservation District. I don't know if continuing to monitor, you know, just helps. You know, oftentimes we'll do these things as informational for the public to understand where they are and help, you know, provide information for mitigation and education, and okay, this is going through. I mean, we have this thing with invasive species. They come in and now they're just here. You know, maybe the data is just helping to say, okay, where are the hot spots this year? But as a policy issue, I probably would not change my position. So in terms of what we do.
Scott, do you want to add to that?
Here's what I'll share. You had, and this is what I love about how the process works. Last spring, you had residents come in from mutually exclusive, independently on their own, came in and said to the county, I have this problem. But as a county board, you responded by saying, okay, let's help us understand this problem. So that got us up to this point in time. So as a county board, you did not sit on your hands. You know, an issue was brought to the table. You've heard them. You responded. I mean, you could have said, it's, you know, not our issue. You didn't. You actually did something. So whether you do anything further or not, you know, as a county board, as policymakers, you chose to respond and to act. And to continue to monitor, even just monitoring data, really is still being responsive to that, but it's also helpful for those who may find themselves in a hotspot or potentially see a hotspot next year so they can prepare. We can get public information out, we can focus in maybe on those areas and say, because what I want to do is reach out to everybody who participated and say, next step, in the fall, look for egg masses, and you know, there's a few things that they can do, and it can moving into spring. Early on, say, you know, if you see them, here's what you can do. We can at least provide information. This is information, and there's other things we can do. So I guess it's, you know, you've not done, you are doing something, and you've heard your constituents, you've responded, and I think, you know, you're gonna be proud of that. Where you go from there, once again, that's up to you, but you certainly did something.
Yeah, I think Carolyn made a good point, that the educational aspect of it for the public, so the public has some place to go to get this data. I think it's worthwhile to keep doing this for a few years and see where we go with it.
Because one of the other things I'm so sorry, just to follow up on that, one of the other things you're gonna find too is if somebody did spray and their numbers, that's information too, right? They sprayed and here's what happened, you know, did it work or didn't it work? Right,
Yeah.
right, so it's good, I mean, this is all great data.
Yeah. Carl?
Yeah, it would, great that you're giving this to the state, and who knows, maybe the state will say, we might need to help those with years of data that you're giving them, and I'm all for, you know, collecting it the way you are.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, actually, I'll tell you one outcome, and our residents from Marengo who came to the table last year, the state actually put up, they're experimenting with a new type of trap. It's an electronic trap that monitors them, and I think they knew when the first
counts
moth
them
hit.
going in?
Yeah, they knew, yeah, exactly, so it counts, it's like.
Look on your phone, I got 11 traps.
High-tech trap.
Bing, bing.
I'm going fishing this afternoon.
But what's interesting is because of, and I will say because of this participation, you know, the state has taken an interest in what we're doing. Well, you know, we know Nancy Johnson, who's been our go-to subject matter expert, and she's been very helpful throughout this, but she, you know, has, you know, like I said, that trap that she wants to try, and she put it on Frank and Susan's property in Marengo. You know, the state, you know, when they want to look at data, this is going to be very helpful to them. And I think even to the point of just seeing who sprayed and what was the net effect of that spray year after year. And, you know, we can see, you know, does it work and to what extent? And how does that population move? So.
Yeah, okay.
I think as an observation, you know, knowledge is power, and that's fine, but I think only for observation, because I think by us spraying or doing something, if the forestry department isn't, we're getting out of our lane. You know, it's not our place to be the forestry department, but that's just one opinion. But I think that the observation and just maintaining that knowledge over the years is great, but I think all we're going to do is observe Mother Nature. We're not going to change what happens with these spongy moths by spraying a zone or two. Don't you agree? Or I don't know, but I mean that, you know, my observations are far from scientific, but just as a layman, I don't see where spraying and trying to alter Mother Nature has done anything but adverse conditions and historically of what we've done.
Well, to that point, I never would have guessed that this area would have been the hotspot that it was.
Yeah.
This is that, you know, this is the property on East Crystal Lake Avenue. The data really didn't suggest it. I know we had a few high numbers here, but we knew the Bull Valley area, Marengo area, because those residents came to the table. It was remarkable that I wish I knew why they went from almost like from 0 to 1,462 in a year. So we don't have a good answer for that. And interesting, if we do this again next year, what's it going to look like there? And is the population going to stay high? Is it going to crash? And is there going to be a hotspot somewhere else? That's the interesting thing. What we always say is, you know, could it be maybe they move something from one place to another that had a whole bunch of egg masses on it, and that introduced it. That's why we've been putting out good public awareness ads. You know, don't move firewood. Even within the county, if I move firewood from my house to Mr. Gaudemaller's house, and I've got a whole bunch of egg masses on it that I didn't know, and he's got firewood and he doesn't burn it, and next spring, he's got spongy moths that came from my property. Simple things like that. So just be mindful if you're going to move anything. Make sure you check, and they're distinguishable. They look like an off-white blob. They call it spongy moths. Could look like a blob of like spongy material. That's an egg mass. And if you take patio furniture or firewood or a trailer, I mean anything that's really outside, wherever the females are, when they really lay their eggs, they lay their eggs. And if you move whatever that is from point A to point B, you introduce that population. It's very critical to not move anything from out of the county into, let's say, if you have a place further west, you don't want to take your firewood from here to there because now you could be transplanting that population. But we're going to continue running those public awareness messages, and hopefully people will understand that, maybe just check. A simple check for what you're moving, and if you see it, scrape it off, take care of it, and you're never going to get rid of them, but a little effort, you can keep the population under control, if you're aware of it.
Well, great, thank you for that. I think it'll be a data-driven decision when we do it, because I think everybody here agrees that you should go ahead with this program again next year and track it and see what we come up with.
All right. As we get this further developed too, I'll probably come before you once again, just going to give you a better picture, but I just want to show you where we're at today.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Sounds good, Scott, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing was your comment last year about the storms blowing around.
Yeah, oh, I do appreciate you sharing those pictures.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Very nice.
That's it. Year to year it can change.
yeah.
Scholar language.
I'll tell you where I was gonna put it.
Discussion and direction, the 2030
Yeah.
comprehensive plan. So we have Adam and Renee here. Mary, did you want to set up the table, or just you're here to listen, or do you want to speak?
I'm afraid to say anything.
Okay, well, that's fair.
Best that I sit
I-
here and let people.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything, I just
I
wanted to
appreciate it.
give you an invite if you wanted to come up. Yes, Adam?
So, no, this is on there because we had kind of a false start 2 months ago at the county board where it was on there. Caused a little bit of a panic for everybody that saw it just pop up on the agenda from outside. So we wanted to kind of be a little bit more clear in the direction before we get to that point in time. So in April, Regional Planning Commission finished their portion of the comprehensive plan, and as the project goes, it goes from them, put it together as the citizen commission, to then go to the county board for the county board's review, any input, modifications, and then adoption. So first step in this is going to be a presentation. September, that's what our discussion, direction, or request is to have John Househill from Househill Levine come in and give the presentation, address any questions off the cuff that may come from the county board, kind of introduce it and get the whole county board familiar with the plan. And then the following month would be kind of that action step where we put it on 30-day review. And then November, the anticipated schedule will be then for adoption. So if there's some discussion as we get into the kind of meat and potatoes of the plan, that October to November may change. So, but that 30-day review step would be what that October plan would be.
Presentation in September?
Yes, this month would just be the presentation, discussion, and orient the board.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. Anybody have anything on that?
Go ahead, Carol.
I see that Joe and Carol are looking at kind of.
Well, I mean-
We didn't spend any time on it at all.
No, not at all. That would be okay if this document was actually in shape to go forward. I think that, we've had some conversations back and forth about the open space map. We have pages of public comments that we talked at our last meeting when we met as a side group to have a conversation about this. This is, I don't know, I think the third update that we have received, Joe and I. This is dated 8/14. Many of the comments in the public comments, some of my comments that were pretty detailed about what needed to be corrected, comments from the Conservation District, from the Land Conservancy, aren't in here. There's a legend on, I mean, we're talking about there's early on, there's graphs. I back in my comments from that time period showed that there was not a.
It's 103, look at the map.
That one just appeared.
Yep,
That's in the 814 draft.
okay.
So, but we're talking, and so when we had our meeting before, so what I'm trying to get at is there's a number of items that are just, they're there. Like if you go to the graphs very early on when you're talking about population trends and data, there are 4 lines on the graph. There's only 3 lines in the legend. I said that back in April, or my comments came, I don't know if it was April, but in time for the public hearing. Just things like, number of contacts that have been made with the public. It was 600, was what I'm assuming, but there's 3 references to it in the document. One of them says 700. Little things like that have been pointed out. Some of them have been corrected. Some of them have not. I don't believe that Tamarack Farms has made its way on the open space map. That was something we had a conversation about. The Conservation District had some things that they wanted done. If you go back in, they like to be referred to in full, McHenry County Conservation District. In this version, that is corrected, but then what we have is McHenry County Conservation District followed by McHenry County Conservation District in parentheses. We had one of our trustees from a township that had made a couple of notes, but one was in the implementation, wondering where the index was, because that wasn't part of the final document that went out to the public comments and said that implementation is set on agriculture, started on page 90. It actually started on page 89. So little things like that haven't really made their way in here. There are other actionable items, because one of the things we thought would happen when we talked about this was anything in the public comments that was actionable would be acted upon. So only things that should be coming before the board would be more of policy direction, like are we talking, how do we want to handle some of the zoning issues or 15-minute communities? Is the wording appropriate for when we get more out into the rural areas? Things that we would want to have some input on. This other stuff can just be acted on. Land Conservancy, one of our important partners, there's a page in here that talks about different organizations that serve as references. So you've got the Farm Bureau, the Soil and Water, the Conservation District. They said, can we be included? Because these are the 3 major programs that we offer to our landowners. That didn't get into the plan. So what we were hoping to see is that these actionable items would be corrected before we move forward.
Okay.
And in talking to Joe, who's been through this process before, is it more important to do it quickly or is it more important to get it right? And in the past, sometimes just more time was taken to make sure it got done right. And then we can also be addressing some of the other questions that we have.
Okay. Besides
Go
what
ahead.
Caroline, Caroline and I did talk about this over the weekend, and we've talked about it off and on now for a couple months. But, and this was the first time over the weekend that I had all of the comments, because Renee sent them over to me. Thank you, appreciate that. My wife didn't when I was reading through them on Friday and Saturday, but
It was a long weekend.
some of it is, there's really 2 aspects that concern me. There's the one aspect that like in Conservation District, I went through literally every one of their lines just because I was trying to see what happened. And I know what happened because I've made this mistake before. When you do, when you're working with Word and you go through and you hit all the highlights, what Word doesn't do is it doesn't check your captions. And as a result, it just doesn't do it. I don't know why it doesn't do it. That's just the way it is. But as a result, maybe half or 2/3 of the Conservation District stuff where its captions were misspelled. whoever typed this originally didn't like to use I's because it was missed over and over and over again. Whoever did the headlines, infill wasn't spelled right, it was missing the I's. Things like, you know, and you're just like, come on, somebody read the head. And I don't know why the Conservation District took it upon themselves to read all the headlines, but they did. And most of those have been fixed. But it's just that tenor. The second thing that I'm concerned about is that we've made some dramatic changes in this plan. And I don't know that the public is ready for I mean, we say on one hand we're gonna preserve farmland, but on the other hand, we're gonna have 15-minute walkable neighborhoods. Well, and we have plans in here that call for densities of 10 units, 20 units an acre. We're not, guys, for the last 40 years that I've been working in comp plans, the county always dealt with the fact that sewer systems and sanitation treatment was a limiting factor. It's not mentioned in here. It's not used in here. We've just abandoned that whole process and decided instead, you know, we're just gonna do these things. And it's fine if we've made that conscious decision to do that. But even when they talk about like the estate planning parts, or when they talk about the densities, estate planning is 2 units to an acre according to this comp plan. Okay, we don't have an estate zoning that's less than 1 unit to an acre. I mean, unless you want to call us, you know, our secondary home sites on every lot, if that means that that's what we're gonna have, that's great, but we've just decided that's gonna be the change. And so those are the kind of things that scare me. You know, we just happen to throw in on page 105 that we're gonna pursue additional Fox River crossings. And they mention the one that has been failed now for 50 years. I think you got a better chance of seeing Route 53 happen than you do of seeing a bridge between, you know, south of Cary and north of Algonquin.
Yeah, that Cowie property area.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, the boards before us got within 600 feet. There's 600 feet of bypass that's not completed. But it's not gonna happen in our lifetimes. And interestingly enough, what brought my attention to that was the Conservation District was concerned about it because it goes through their plan. What the Conservation forgot was that when that, you said they didn't forget it, but it's not mentioned in their stuff. The county bought, when the Conservation District bought Fox Bluff, the county paid like $1 million, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was $1 million, in order to buy the rights to cross it. And so, it's like,
Well, I think-
that map's already there, guys.
Yeah, no, but I think they know that, in fairness, because I know, because they had a whole, this is the Fox Bluff area, which is where former Camp Algonquin used to be. They had a whole master plan for that, but over time is, you know, the or lack of ability to raise the funds or levies, whatever, they've kind of had to revamp what they want to do. They're well aware that that right-of-way exists. I think their concern here was, when this first was brought into the document, no mention was made that there are environmentally sensitive areas within that property. So whatever crossing comes to pass, no pun intended, to take into consideration the environmental sensitive areas on that property to make sure there's the least amount of destruction as possible. I think that's all that they were getting at. But, so those were some of the things that came into that one as well.
It's the combination. I mean, some of it's just, get your high school English teacher out and make them fix it, because it's repairable. I mean, in that respect. And then the other part, I just think the board needs to decide whether that's the path they want to travel. I would hate to have to defend against somebody putting in, a high intensity just because it's near. I mean, I used the thing by Ridgefield, but you're talking about Alden, you're talking about all the crossroad towns as being the places where we're going to put high density development in. We're not going to do that.
Well, I think, and those are the kinds of conversations that we can have, right, in terms of, was that even the original intent with the plan in the first place? Because I have a feeling, like, I think that wasn't the intent, was to have these mass developments at those crossroads. I think if there's wording that needs to be done then we can work on that. I think what we need to do is, a lot of the other stuff that came up it needs to be a clean document to work with. We talked about, is there a possibility to, you would ask, was there one that we could redline or where we could manipulate? I know that being in chapter format is difficult, because once you start playing with it, now your paragraphs are out of line. I mean, it's but, so this is really twofold, right? Trying to get the document cleaned up to where all the little things are just done. Somebody's following up on it. I've got another 4 pages now of what I know that people were asking for, including me, that we now need to go back because now either something else has come up or it wasn't corrected or it was corrected and it looked great. I even have it here perfect. That was exactly what they should have done. But there's still stuff to do.
We'll deliver that message and oversee it a little
Yeah,
bit
the
closer.
question we have is, we have the consultant lined up for Cal to do the presentation of the RPC plan that you have here. So are we doing that, or am I calling and canceling? That's what we need to
We
know.
get from point A to point B, and what's the timing of it? Are we ready to do that or not?
By the cow? I don't think so. I don't think so.
For one, I don't even know if I have the latest plan to review.
No, I
You
think
don't.
it's too fast.
So how could I even respond to you?
That's right.
And that's,
That's the
Right.
point of the
Yeah.
presentation.
I know one,
But this is
you
what
know
they're
what Joe had
presenting.
mentioned also about the high
Okay.
density of the 10 to 12 per acre. And I'd spoken to Neely and Jim on that, and they said, well, it's just like a target, wouldn't it be nice? But it doesn't say that, right, Joe?
It
doesn't say that at all.
It gives some developer the option to walk it.
To try to achieve the unobtainable, right, in places where we're not gonna help them with sewer and water, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if I saw some verbiage in there that we would like to, we would support someone trying to achieve that higher, that would help a 15-minute, but to give them a target to shoot for that's unobtainable is almost kind of scary, because future boards might end up saying, hey, well, it says it right here, let's help them get that mass. And the only other thing is, I'd like to see the latest plan, because my battery is really low and I can't get on it, but I think May of 24 is the last one that's on the website to even read. So
That's the
could I
one that
get
would have went to public
Could
hearing.
I get a recent one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Mary, did you want to add something? Are you done, John?
Although I had one other comment, but.
In a minute.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, the only other thing is, and it's uncomfortable, but in some of the parts, and I don't know if it's changed from, May to August, but some of them were saying that we would accommodate some members of the community of minorities in subdivisions. And historically, as a realtor, we were always discouraged from doing that, because you don't want to push a certain sect of the community into a subdivision where they all live. You wanted everybody to decide the neighborhood they wanted to live in. And so I was a little uncomfortable with saying that we're going to build, diverse, equity, inclusion neighborhoods, because how do you know they do or don't want to live there? So I think that I don't know if I would want to stay in that lane.
So nothing on that
Did that
level, the bigger
change?
picture, nothing has changed.
Mm-hmm.
What has changed is just typos, map
Yeah.
errors, and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
no, the big concepts are all the same. That's the Plan Commission, what they heard at public hearing is what they approved
Yeah.
and are sending on to you
Yeah.
guys. So as far as policy is concerned, that may document
And I know
is
things
accurate.
change in the public sector, but as realtors or people that were helping people find housing, it was called steering. and you could be sued for that. So would we be doing something like that if we were?
Certainly wouldn't be the intention.
Right, it would certainly not, and it never is
Yeah, I
that
got you.
intention. You know, it never is that intention. But it could be perceived 10 years down the road where, why did you people do that? So I was just a little concerned over that, you know.
Yeah, that's a part of the conversation. I mean, Renee just made a comment that that was the public comments and the draft was approved and moved forward.
So,
But I don't, but part of the public comments was cleaning up or adding in like our land use, our land conservancy asking to be a resource on that resource page. That didn't require action by our board. That was just adding pertinent information that should be included in the document. That was an action that could have just been taken. So moving it forward is one thing, actually making the changes in this document and making sure it's accurate and up to date so that this, what we bring forward, if we're gonna bring this forward in September, people are gonna read it and they're going, what do you, this, well, they're going to look at the open space map does not include Tamarack Farms in this version.
I'm not familiar with Tamarack Farms.
It's part of the open space, which is what I was talking about when we were exchanging emails about updating to include the Tamarack Farms, making sure the easements were on there. And now we've got one with a different language in the legend. There's things that are missing. If people were to go through this document and just notice just the mistakes and the lack of follow through, to me that would be, I would be embarrassed to push this forward at this point and just to talk about policy with the document itself that has things that need to be corrected. And I don't think that I'm wrong on that.
It was Hackmatack?
It doesn't, I'm not even gonna go there because we can pull that out. There's too many things in this document that are not correct, that need to be corrected before we move forward. We're not even at the point to talk policy.
Well,
And
I'm
there's
confused
nobody
with you.
pushing back on making those changes.
No, but this,
You give us
but-
those changes get made. Nobody's
no, they're
pushing
in
back
the
on
public
that.
comments
And
and I've
we've been
given
begging for them for months.
Excuse me?
We've been begging for all these changes for months.
These
so.
changes are in public comments.
Mhm.
You don't need to get them from me. They're already there.
They're there, and Halcyon Levine, we paid them to go through them. Why they didn't make some of the changes, we need to have that conversation.
Okay,
with
but
them.
who has to have that conversation? Because the fact of the matter is.
I can have it, you can have it, any of
No,
us can have
I'm
it.
not the liaison to Halcyon Levine. I never have been.
So
And-
Carolyn, I will have the conversation.
That's fine.
with you.
Somebody on staff needs to follow up to make sure that these corrections are actually made. To wait for me to say, they're in here. We said last time we met, these are actionable items. If Halcyon Levine, if it keeps going back to them and it comes back wrong, who's responsible to make sure that the thing that was said that needs to be done comes back and is correct?
I will be, Carolyn.
We thought we
So-
had it correct.
So, and
So we have to know what we still have wrong.
Okay, so I've already done 4 pages of following up on things in public comments that were actionable items that we talked about. If they're actionable, change them. I've got now 4 pages of actionable items that have not happened, or they happened and now they're incorrect for another reason. It takes sitting down and looking at every comment and making sure it's right in the document. It's a big lift. So you talk about a weekend where you're not doing anything, this is it. And here's the public comments, here's my spread, my notes, and here's did it happen or not, okay?
We
That's the
thought
only way you
we
can
did
do it.
that. So if we haven't done our job, we'll do better.
I'm just saying when
And we can set up a meeting with Halcyon Levine anytime.
this is just, all I'm saying is there's just a way to follow up. And to say you're waiting to hear back when it's sitting right here and here's what they produced on 8/14 and there's still issues, I guess I'm not sure what we're waiting for other than we need to look and we need to check. That's
We
what
have
to
that, that's the latest.
That's the latest, right, and that's what I'm looking
That
at.
Halcyon Levine and staff thought we had correct.
Correct, and that's
So
what
if
I'm
there are
saying.
things that aren't correct, we need to know what those are.
But part of knowing that is looking. And I can't be, I'm happy to sit down and I have 4 pages right now of what isn't in there.
Perfect, that's what we need to do.
Right,
Page
but I have to
103
need, somebody else
that
has
has
to
a
help out
foreign
with that
language.
process.
That's what we need to do.
Page 103 that has a foreign language as an explanation of this map.
What happens with those is that they're using a different program, InDesign, to
What
write
they're
it.
using, it's
And
not even
there's-
in English.
Correct, because there's fonts that they use that we don't have.
So
We
one
don't
of the
have
first,
access
one of the
to, so
first
it
things we would do to
translates it
test
that
that,
way.
one of the first things we would do to test that is verify if it's correct, and it happens this way with a lot of different PDFs. If it's actually correct in the digital format, but then once it's communicated through
Right,
the printer,
shifted.
it can get jumbled.
It can
So
get
that would be the first test, and I wouldn't be terrifically surprised if we look at that PDF and it is correct. But when it actually gets output through the printer, however that works, it gets jumbled.
Okay,
That said, that's not an excuse. What that turns into is the next person that when we post it on our site, may print it and then it comes out like that. That needs to be fixed. So what it turns into is we need to find common fonts that are gonna be preloaded and coordinated with Microsoft Word PDFs, and then the printer drivers is where it goes. So that's a small
Maybe it's
solution.
simple.
As soon as you showed it to me, that's what I thought, but
Well, and
Yeah.
like I said,
that's nothing.
there was no doubt because of the colors that it was describing a map, okay? But it certainly wasn't describing a map in any language I
It's
could read.
1920s Russian. Yeah, it didn't work. I'm with you.
And
Mary wants to make a comment.
Yeah, but I
She's
do
been-
wanna, do you mind if I follow up on one comment,
Okay.
please? Waiting to hear what that is, I'm sorry, somebody needs, it can't be a county board member to go
No.
through this and make sure that information is brought back to you. Anybody can be doing what I've been doing.
To be honest, I think you guys are actually talking about two different pieces. We can talk about that perhaps maybe a little more detail offline. I hear your message, Carolyn. And what Renee was talking about was a couple of the different maps that we were talking about for several months. I was party to those emails.
Those should have come from, I followed up again last night to make sure that that open space map was sent. That is one of 4 pages of things that didn't get fixed. So, and that map might be fine, that follow-up might be fine. And according to, in here, no, I mean, I don't see Tamarack, but that's not my thing. I don't read maps. Right, but I don't see Tamarack Farms in there.
Okay.
Mary, did you want to comment?
Okay, it's Mary Donner. I'm the chairman of the now, it's not defunct, but it's kind of suspended, RPC. And Carolyn, you did a marvelous job. You do more than anybody else that I know of in investigating anything. I read the first 2, the third one I kind of said, well, I don't know what was being changed, so I'm not reading 199 pages for the third time. You have done that, and you keep a lot of information to you that I don't know anybody with your schedule can keep up with, so I appreciate it. And Joe, we've known each other for a long time. All of this is good. The problem that I see is that what we did was have to look forward to 2050. Never at any point did I say anything that this should go to 2050. We can't. The world has moved too fast. It's moving faster and faster all the time. We don't know if we're going to have another situation like we did when they said that the CMAP said we were going to have 425,000 people within the next 10 years. And we're losing people. We're not gaining people. What do we need to do to gain people? Young people want to see DEI. Yes. So those are the words we use now. Before it was equality, then it was equity, then it was the great race, the great society, then it was something else, then it was the Jesus saying something that we all need to be equal. What that word is doesn't make any difference. We all have to, hopefully we'll be changing our faces to recognize that all people are of color. all people have an intelligence of some sort. What do we need to do to help the people that don't? That sounds very democratic, but it's not. It's just the way you would want to be treated, I would want to be treated. So now we're looking at something that has to go out to 2050. Well, by 2050, we're hoping that maybe the crossroads out in the middle of freaking nowhere will no longer be that way, and what will we do? Within cities, you want water and sewer. Well, if the county doesn't advocate for water sewer, then there isn't going to be that kind of growth. If we have 18 or 8, 10, whatever number of dwellings within a certain area, if there's not water to do that, and let's go back to water, there's not water to do that, it can't be done. And a county isn't in the position of setting up those kind of things. But if there were in 2050, what would we allow? It took 30 years to get 6231 intersection. How long is it going to take to get the next one? How long is it going to take when you get through all the other governmental things? We had to be looking up here, and that's what we did. So for policy, if you don't like the policy, then that county board can turn around and change it, and you can argue that at that time. But that's not something we were privy to or allowed to even think about. And Carolyn, you made comments during the May meeting. That doesn't mean, and we didn't, we saw what there was, what people were wanting and what they were talking about, and okay, let's go ahead. I'm not changing everything at that time because somebody wants something. And you said, oh, well, this can be written better, and this can be written better, or this should be this way and that should be that way. And I thought, okay. But that's not something we needed to change to make the document viable. Maybe made it look better, maybe read clearer, but that was not something we needed to vote on that I thought of or that anybody else we thought. I asked everybody, do you have any questions? Well, I didn't. Charlie did because I couldn't talk. Now I can talk. And this is why I didn't want to step my foot in anything. But I think it needs to be said that this is so far ahead, we need to set up, along with all of the other discussion, some way to have a permanent plan commission that is going to look at this every 5 or 10 years and see if it's still viable. If it's not viable, then it needs to be fixed, or then it needs to be changed, or something special needs to be done. But this is what we're saying for 2050. In the next 10 years, we're going to be doing one for 2060, and we still won't know what we're doing if any of us are alive. So I want you to please take that into consideration.
Would be better doing this as a 2040 plan, just calling it 2040 instead of 2050.
I'm sorry?
Would be better just call it 2040 instead of 2050.
It could, but everybody else, all the other agencies are already talking 2050. So we have to talk 2050 too. So there are things in there, yeah, that are pie in the sky, and that a lot of people aren't going to like because nobody likes to have something go in next to them that wasn't there when they got their house. It's NIMBY, you've known that. Nobody wants that. Nobody understands they don't want somebody else to do something, or they don't want something else to happen, and we were trying to confine major areas of population to where they should be, and that's your 15-minute walk. You're not going to find a 15-minute walk in Alden unless you want to end up in Wisconsin, and then you kind of got to take some other kind of, you know what I'm talking about. So those things are the things that we talked about and that we did, and I found it hurtful that in my head, we had worked so hard to come up with something that was that good and to make everybody included, not because it's DEI, but because we had all this information from all these different places, and this is what we knew. I invited PE&D, I invited the county board members, I invited everybody and their brother to come to these meetings, listen to them, talk about them, and give us some other direction. What do you want? This is what we had to work with, so this is what we came up with. And I think it's our good plan. we can get rid of all the typos, we can, or not. I mean, give them something in French. We've all got translators on our, it's silly to say, it's not silly to do. I understand what you're saying. You know me, I'm the same way. But I didn't see the things that you saw because I don't have the background that you had. And you can talk to me about it, but you were there at the meetings, we all talked. And this is what we came up with, and I always ask people, is this what you want? Do we have any other objections? Is there anything going on? So this is what 11 people came up with, and barring, I'm sorry?
Because I need to know what to do about now, whether John is
How do we go about
That's just-
forward
that's
in
all I'm
this
doing.
somehow? Personally, I think even without that document, John Housefield could make a motion, John Housefield could make a presentation on it because he's got everything there. He's got all the pictures, he's got everything he can talk about so that everybody has an overview. We can get those things fixed as fast as you can get those things. That's not we. It's not he, she, it, him, or I say we, personal. But so that we can get that fixed and then go forward as you planned. Because once you get into December, nothing is happening. If you get into January, everybody's getting their new positions if they're going to have them. And then we have February where nobody knows what was going on and what do you do. So Joe, I appreciate it. I just wanted to be able to have my 2.5 cents and I gave you $1.50, $1.350. And so thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to respond a little bit because to characterize it as if I was just trying to say I can write it better in some areas and that I'm just doing that is just pretty insulting. And the reason for that is because what I was asking for when I made some of my comments, and it's in public record, go and read it. Because when you put in MS4 and you don't tell people what MS4 is or why you're saying it's, well, because of MS4, this is important that we do this, and you don't tell them what MS4 is, how is that helpful? Explain what it is and why it's important, or don't put it in there. If there were sentences that were paragraphs were completely repeated, if there were sections that I asked for clarity, there was a reason for it. It wasn't because I think I'm better at it. It's that if you're reading a document, people should be able to read it and understand it. If there's an acronym and you haven't spelled it out, people aren't going to be able to do that. So it's not to say I can do this better. So I'm sorry, I think that was pretty unfair. And yes, we were in the room, and I think the direction is something that the commission brought forward. They spent a lot of time on it. There's a lot of things we have to go back and talk about this because this was a long process and a lot of people did a lot of work. Things worked well, things didn't work well. How can we do it better next time? And I think that everybody can be a part of that process. And I know staff has a lot of responsibility and they've got other things that they're doing. How can we make the process easier? We're really talking about two different things. A document, do we want to put forward a document that somebody's going to read and have these problems still with it? People in the community who have made very specific comments in their public written comments that are now public record that aren't addressed, and they're going to come and we're going to present that to the county board in September. There's two things there. There's making sure the document is ready and then addressing the policy issues that we may or may not agree on. You know, that's what we do all the time, right? But and sure, House of Levine can talk to the document, talk to the higher issues. They did that in the public hearing. But you have a document that's not ready. It's my opinion, it's not ready. Joe can talk better about timing. That's, you know,
Well, I don't have a problem with Levine coming and speaking, you know, and bringing the board up. I just am with Carolyn on the fact that there's things that, like I said, I mean, somebody had to know that the I's weren't getting checked on, and the letter I kept missing.
Well, we
I mean,
didn't
it's like-
own the same eye they owned. That's the explanation for that.
No, I understand.
Well, I think that part of it can be correct.
That part's correct, but there's
Easily
other
enough.
things.
And it needs to be cleaned up, so we're all reading the same thing.
That's why it's a draft.
Yeah.
We can clean that stuff up till the very end.
Do we think the presentation will give us a picture of where we're at to help with making some of these policy decisions a little faster?
The bigger policy issues, he'll be
Yeah.
able to explain those to you. How we got to the plan, what the exercises that we went through, the public participation that we went through. That's what he would be talking to you about.
The idea would be to give us, everybody a starting point and foundational understanding of how the process went, the plan, and then this is what came out of that, out of the commission's plan and officially being turned over. And then the opportunity, again, touching on those bigger concepts and then even some of the as granular as we want. To that effect, can we get the road, to rise up and meet that conversation?
Because this will go out then this document is gonna be pushed out there. Are you gonna have the presentation without letting people read the document?
That would be.
This would go out
I think that would be
then with the-
unfair a little bit. I mean, that would be my thought, that would be the goal, is that it would
This
pair.
would go out with.
It would be unfair not to have
Right,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this should, what day is it? Second, third, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
third.
so
10 days.
there is time, I mean,
12th, isn't
we've
it?
gone.
Next board, the cow, the 12th? This would be at the cow or the general meeting?
This would be the
So
cow.
that
That's the
document would
12th,
go
isn't it?
out.
So 10
This
days.
document's gonna go out on Friday.
Yes. Could I have a copy of this? Could you email me a copy?
The one we give you today will be different than the one we give you tomorrow,
personally,
John.
I mean, if you wanted my opinion, Larry, if I could speak, just real quick, I think it's a great idea to have the presentation. And I would move forward even with the Scrivener's error, Carolyn, because that's something we could correct. I mean, if the conversation is to explain the reason why we're doing the 15-minute walks everywhere, or the high density, or why we're just including DEI and new development, not all over the county, would be the conversations that I would like to see and make sure that, maybe we're all in agreement, maybe we're not.
I think there's some things that if you want to bring, I don't have a problem having a conversation. I just feel like some of this could have been already dealt with.
You've said that for about a half an hour, and I agree with you.
No, I'm just
But,
saying,
I
no,
mean,
what I'm saying,
we're
so
in
let me
weeds
finish.
here.
What I'm trying to say is, I think that there are things that if you really want to bring this forward, if we work hard enough, and I think it can be done, a lot of the stuff that won't draw attention to people, we can figure out. We can get some of the concerns met by some of the public comments. I'm happy to sit down. We've got some from Mary McCann. We've got some from Lori Cisneros, who is a trustee. We've got people who have made comments. It really would be helpful if we would address some of those before we put out the document. That's all. That's my thought. And so you want to try to get it done? I'm willing to. I mean, I've gone through their comments multiple times. I've got 4 pages of things I think that we kind of need to find and correct real quickly. But I can't correct the document, and now I can't even pull the darn thing up.
I will say one thing, I have not every time we've gotten comments have them corrected it, because it costs us money every time I do that. So
Yeah,
that's another
yeah.
part of it. But that one that's the latest. All the corrections that I felt needed to be made are in that last document.
Okay, but I'm only looking at the public comments from the public hearing. I'm not talking about anything that's come in since. I'm looking at the public comments from the public hearing, and they're not.
Right, but I'm a little on the back foot because I don't know what you're looking at. So we can discuss those, of course.
I don't know why, but every time I pull this up, I know I have it, but it's not, oh, wait a minute. There's just too many.
Gotcha.
Is that oh, God, yes it is. Because I still have the 615 out. No, this is the one I had. This is fine. Okay. It's not pulling up.
And again, if the comments that you're looking at are substantive or the consultant felt were at all affected the underlying policy of the plan, they wouldn't have made those changes. They've only made changes from the RPC since the RPC hearing is closed, they'll only make changes that are Scrivener's errors or factual mapping
What
errors.
drives me crazy is that they did some of them, but they half-assed it. When you take out, and you have the Henry County Conservation District, because they wanted to have it spelled out, and then you take in the parentheses and type McHenry County Conservation District, and then you type it a third
Yeah,
time.
and we need to have that
It's like, come on,
conversation with
guys.
them. And we
I
will.
mean, you know,
It's been a long slog
it's
for
been
2
a
years.
long slog, but somebody, they gave that to some summer intern and said, fix this stuff, and nobody looked at it again. Okay, I mean, you know, nobody, they sent the draft 2 out, whatever, without ever checking or without ever realizing that Word didn't check the headlines.
Okay.
All right, I mean, that's not something, I shouldn't be reading for typos. That's not my job, you know, but if you can't, and what got me was, I say, read the conservation districts. Whoever was typing the headlines didn't like to use the letter I, because it is over and over and over again. I don't know why, you know, but it's like, this is silly that it came to us that way. And you know, when I get on the latest draft and I see a foreign language explaining the map, I'm like, what did we do? I mean, where else did we miss things at? And again, I'm not your proofreader. I shouldn't be your proofreader. But that's what's here. I mean,
Joe, you've missed your calling.
Well, I think we all agree that there's.
We're clear.
Certainly the typos, the language barrier, some pertinent ideas need to be incorporated. What is the timing for getting some of that cleaned up and back to us? I mean, if we're gonna have the presentation at the cow and we're gonna have some of this cleaned up, I'd like to have it at least a few days before the cow, so I can review it.
let them do it. Whatever they hand out, they hand out. If we find typos, we'll deal with it.
The typos can be fixed at any date.
Right.
But if we could get it out in the best presentation we could because of the timing of it.
There's,
At this point, it'll have to be that one because Halcyon and Levine probably wouldn't have time to do any changes before we need to have it in Friday.
that would be
Okay.
my concern.
So if we're comfortable with that, we can.
So do we put an explanation out to the board members that are looking at this, saying, we understand there's typos, there's issues, we're doing the presentation for the big policy concepts and discussion.
Yeah.
The rest of it will get cleaned up.
That's why,
And so-
Doing is theirs to be fixed.
that's why it's still
Well,
adjourned.
that's,
And still go ahead with the presentation for the policy portion of it. Is that acceptable, workable? I want to ask,
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine. Yeah, I'm willing to sit through it and hear it, you know,
You
and
should put
bring the
for our
board up.
Slavic viewers, you're gonna like page 103.
Well, it may be,
No, this one's for you.
maybe it would be a way to draw attention to them on what I'm looking at as a sloppy job coming from them on their part.
I agree with that for sure.
So that crossed my mind too, is you kind of bring them right over the fire for that. Part 2 is prior to this document going on public 30-day review, that we would be
It's still coming
confident
back
that
to
we would
this
have.
board.
It'll still come back to the board.
here and then it goes back on October if you're gonna do that.
Yes, yeah, that I would be confident that, yeah, not only can we comb the document and receive any other comments, you know, internally, but that would be polished and the outward facing document would be one that you guys would be able to, there wouldn't be distractions from the Scrivener's errors or the typos or the, you know, the formatting issues. And you're gonna be able to really focus in on the policy items.
So that would be in October, right?
That'd be October here, and then
Right.
assuming that it passes here, it'll go to the board and for 30-day layover or whatever.
Right.
Right.
In October, it would go for the
It
30
would
days.
go-
assuming it gets out of
Yeah.
here.
Assuming it gets out of here, right, and that's what I
Yeah.
was just gonna follow up on, Carolyn, is that, I mean, it won't come through the same way.
So what it will look like is he'll do the presentation. I don't know if there will be policy discussion at that time, but I'm sure you'll have discussion after the CAL, before the October meeting. And then in October, when it comes back, we should have all the typos, all the factual stuff. We will have those taken care of. And then you guys will redline this document if you want to make changes, policy changes. And then that redline document will go back to the full board.
Okay. I think that's a
Is
plan.
that clear?
I don't know that I have it completely clear in my head on how we're gonna get from point A to point B, but I think we gotta get started. And if it needs to be delayed a month, polished, cleaned up a little different, we'll work on it. But I don't think without getting the presentation made that we're gonna get anywhere.
Okay.
So if we get the presentation, was it Houseman and Levine, is that how to say it?
Halcyon.
John
Halcyon.
Halcyon, one of
That's
the
right.
I mean,
partners, is scheduled. We have him on the schedule for the next CAL.
okay,
He'll be there.
I would think that when they see what they're working with, it would give them some encouragement to clean things up on their end. It would start the board members thinking about what policy is important to them to bring forward and change, if there are changes that we're gonna make. And hopefully we would get some explanation to the board members to, ignore the typos, look at the policy, and actually, read through this before the CAL so you can make your comments. Peter? No? You were standing up?
Because I'm late for another meeting, but
Okay.
I want to make sure I'm getting the direction, and I think we got it now.
Okay.
Household comes in, sets the table, move to a month from now, have a more aggressive discussion on the policies, take it to the best case scenario, take it to the county board in October, put on a 30-day review, and vote in November. And that keeps it with this board. That's the goal.
And I don't see how we do that without having the presentation in this month.
September.
Right.
Okay.
So, obviously, there's some things that everyone isn't happy about, but if we're gonna keep that timing, we gotta do it.
Sounds
Okay.
good. And don't tell them to ignore the typos. We need all the eyes we can get. With a document like that, it's just difficult.
Okay, well, not to focus on them, maybe was what I was saying, let's look at the big
I
picture.
like that.
The rest of it, there's people that should be fixing that for us. Right. Okay? We good for now on that? As good as we can be? Okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, thank you. We'll move
Not
on.
far.
Oh my God, you got the zoning thing.
Yes, we have some zoning things to.
I've already forgotten. I've forgotten what they are. You guys have 6 petitions coming before you this month. One is a solar farm. It did have opposition, and the village of Wonder Lake, it's a village, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did submit a formal objection, but I don't think that means anything. I think the state law trumps the supermajority. So then we had 3 variations. They were all for garages. There was one of them that did have a little bit of opposition, but I don't expect you're gonna hear from them. And then we have 2 billboards that are going to digital billboards. And that's it.
So the one with the experience, that has not been brought back, right?
That's next
Oh, that's
month
next
That's gonna
for
be
the
next month. I
variation.
can remember where that got pushed to. Okay, so that's next
In
month?
October.
That's next.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the survival?
Correct.
Okay,
I don't think they've changed any of their
and
requests, have
I
they? I didn't think they were going to.
I'm not gonna be here in October, I already know that.
Okay.
They spoke, the owner spoke about that there was like one neighbor that was quite against it. But I think you told me one time there was like 7 neighbors showed up
At the hearing.
at the hearing and had issues with it. So I think that needs to be brought up, that there were 7 neighbors that had issue with it. Because when the petitioner spoke to it, he did a good job of making it sound like there was only 1 neighbor that had an issue.
Didn't you send something else out about additional comments on that? Wasn't that?
There was one comment that came after the hearing,
Okay.
another letter of objection.
And you sent
Which,
that out, right?
with those, we'll send them to you, you can look at them, but you're not supposed to base your decision on anything that comes to you after the
Afterwards.
public hearing. But we did send that out.
But there were, what you're saying is that there were 7 people.
7 people that showed up at the hearing.
Okay.
And I thought the petitioner did a very good job of trying to make it sound like there was just 1 aggravated neighbor. But I'm not gonna be here to present that idea. So, okay, anything else? Future topics, executive session, motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Carl, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.